Welcome to the Cole Memo. I'm your host, Cole Preston. Each episode is available in audio and video and transcript formats. To access your preferred format, simply check the episode description that you're currently listening to. You'll find a link that will direct you to my website where you can find the transcript, and you can discover the platforms offering this episode in audio or video. If you're having trouble locating the episode description on your chosen platform, take note of the episode number and visit thecolememo.com. There you can easily locate the corresponding episode and access the audio, video, and transcripts. Additionally, you might find any links that we reference during the show. We have at least 10 today, I think, allowing you to further explore the topics that were discussed. If you're not tuning in via Patreon, it's worth noting that you're hearing this episode after our patrons. If you'd like to become a patron and support the show, visit thecolememo.com/Patreon. It's a fantastic way to support the show. One of the most valuable ways to support the show is entirely free. Simply subscribe to or follow the show, share it with your friends, all of that stuff. Your engagement and support means the world to me. Today is December 30th, 2023, and I'm joined by my good friend Phil with a very relevant background. Folks, if you're not watching the video version of the podcast, please do. Phil, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
I believe this background is the subject of an ongoing lawsuit in Illinois, isn't it?
I think so. I think so. From what I hear, yeah. It's funny. I was just working on making a video version of that report to release to the public. But maybe we'll talk about that later. That story, my own story, actually made the cut for honorable mention for me. So, um,
It was one of my top five.
oh, that's so sweet of you. So anyways, yeah. So folks, if you didn't get the hint there, we have a top five. We're doing our top stories from 2023. It's something that Phil and I did last year, and I just got to thinking, I was like, that'd be really fun to do again this year. It's crazy how quick this year went by. Honestly, looking through some of these stories, I forget what we've been through, Phil. Gosh, we've been through the trenches, it feels
So
like.
much, so much, and so little.
That's right. That's right. And I'd like to, if we can, I want to cue this up for you because I didn't tell you this. Maybe come up with a prediction to close on. What do you think your prediction is for 2024? It could be anything. That's a very vague question. It could, but I just want to hear what you think we might be talking about next year around this time of year. Like, oh, can you imagine that happened? So maybe cue that up. But cracking open a drink, got myself a hemp beverage because it was the year of the hemp beverage. Let us not forget that. Um, Maybe we'll have a little bit of a discussion later. I saw that it made it to your top five, but where do you want to start, Phil? Do you have you want to start at, I guess, probably our fifth story and work our way up to our favorite, maybe, or something like that? Or how do you want to
I
do
don't think
this?
I don't think I really ordered
I
them.
didn't really either, so I would be gunning from the hip on picking what my favorites are, but you know, where do you want to start
And
today?
let me. Uh, well, we could start with my personal favorite,
Sure.
which is the story about the employees at the Department of Public Health making fun of medical patient applications.
Yes. Yeah, let's pull that up here. Can you remind folks that may have missed this story while I pull it up, like what the hell happened here?
They kept like in the like the cafeteria, or the break room, whatever, at the Department of Public Health. I guess they or the cannabis. I don't know how this is all separated, but it seemed like it would have been like a cannabis specific
Hmm.
area that those employees are in. They kept some book that had like photos that they would like write demeaning things under,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
like a Mean Girls burn book, essentially.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, so the headline is five state public health workers kept yearbook that mocked photos of medical marijuana applicants, IG report says. So, the what is the IG? I don't even know.
Inspector General.
Thank you. Um, 5 state public health employees maintained a yearbook that included photos of applicants mocking captions such as "Happy Holidays," which is something we say all the fucking time, and "Why the long face?" Other things, um,
Dicks.
yeah, were found in this. Uh, Phil, I don't want to say it for you. Why did this story stand out to you? Is just crazy.
Because it just sucks.
Yeah.
And the state likes to act like they have like respect for medical patients and stuff like that. But I think this is just like, you know, I mean, the state doesn't give a shit about cannabis consumers in general, and they really don't care about medical patients. They don't care about the medical aspects of the program. That's why it's never been expanded. And then just to have them sitting around making fun of people's pictures, it's just like, come on, guys,
Yeah. And I think
that
I
just that just sucks.
Right. And I think I said this when we first started talking about this, like when it first broke, but what people have to realize that really like puts the icing on the cake, at least for me on this, is that it's the medical cannabis program and that these people, certainly the program was opened up within the last few years so that more people can easily get a card. But the point that I'm trying to make is when you make comments like, why the long face? Well, maybe because this person has like a really serious condition, you know?
Well, or it can be minors, like
Hmm.
kids can get medical cannabis cards.
True.
Um, People with cancer, yeah.
Yeah. But apparently, Miles Willingham, which was the person who apparently was kind of like the top dog at the Illinois Department of Health. He said that the yearbook was created because people sent in, quote, ridiculous photos with their medical cannabis applications. So, pretty crazy story there. Yeah. I am what I smoke was another comment. I think we ended up looking into the actual IG report to see the full, you know, breakdown. I remember
It's
that
just
being,
I feel like I used this example when we talked about it. Like I worked at like a 1 hour photo place like 20 years ago in high school, and it was like I think it was, I don't know if it was actually illegal or if they just gave you the impression like you could be like charged something if you were like to take, because you would look through people's pictures to quality check them when they came out of a printer.
mhm,
Like if there was something in there, like something stupid or potentially someone naked or something, if you were to show that to anyone else, like you were going to get in like big trouble. It was just like, you don't,
right.
like, you're looking at this, that's it. You put it in the envelope and out they go. So it's just crazy to me that people who work in like government who have a much more serious job than that can't take it seriously.
Right. People that literally should probably be complying with like HIPAA standards or something. I don't know. You got to imagine that there's something more than an hour photo development store. Like it sounds like you have a stronger policy on that than
Well, and
what
I
these
think we
people
looked at,
demonstrated.
too, like the people were just like, didn't they still work for the state? Like they weren't like permanently fired or anything. They were just like reprimanded.
Yeah, I think I don't recall exactly, but I know that Miles was let go, but I don't remember anybody else
Oh, okay.
being let go. Yeah. Which is, a bummer because I had actually queued up Miles to come up on the show. He said he was a big fan of the show. So maybe he's listening right now.
Hey, he
Um,
made the top 10 stories.
hey, hey, he did. He did. Well, you want to see one of my favorite stories of this year? Because I think we just jokingly said it one time, Phil. Like we said one time we asked, why doesn't IDFPR just permanently authorize medical cannabis curbside pickup? And then they did that this month. Kind of crazy.
Instead of just randomly doing it every like 6 months, wasn't it?
Yeah, but you also have to wonder, think about the push like I got involved in where we're like trying to make a legislative like a bill and it's like what the fuck were we doing if you could have done this the whole
Right.
time?
Well, I think isn't part of the like not wanting to do it that like medical licenses are only, like there's no social equity medical licensees. So it's like if you're giving them curbside pickup, it's like what's next? You're going to allow them to do full drive-throughs?
I mean,
Like,
yeah,
is that only for medical?
seems like it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's your point there is that the optics of it. Because when we attended that meeting, you and I, with the CROO and CBAI. I was one of the people that asked, this was just codified permanently. What else can we just codify? And
Oh, like delivery. Yeah.
right. And it sounded like there were some things that could be codified and some things that can't. And the line was very unclear. But it really does just make you wonder, like, what can they just do? And is there fear in doing something like that? A, optics, like you just said, or B, are they worried that there's going to be like some lawsuit because somebody's like, well, you just came up with a rule that's not even in the law. You know what I mean? Or something like that. I don't know. It's just such an interesting thought for me. And the fact that we were just like stonily going like, well, why don't they just make this permanent? And then they just fucking did it. It was like, okay, they can do that.
Well, yeah. And yeah, it's like, so, because I remember Aaron Johnson talking about it. It was like something about the language of how cannabis sales happen. Like the reason why they can authorize the curbside thing is because like the sale is still happening in the building or something.
Yeah.
Because you like go get the money, you bring the product out, but it's like they couldn't do that for delivery because the sale wouldn't technically be like happening in the building,
Yeah, like on
something
property.
like that.
I remember her explaining it like that. The only note I have, and this is from a report I published, folks, is Aaron explained that the statute that allowed IDFPR to codify curbside, that the statute allowed them to do that, apparently. She said that they tried to change as much as they can via the rulemaking process, but there is a limited scope of what they can change. She said she doesn't see a pathway forward for home delivery via rule. She also seemed to indicate that she doesn't feel it is a good idea to try to accomplish this via rule, which is interesting to me. Like that's the part where I wonder, like, it's not a good idea. Does that mean like lawsuits or like what does that mean?
Well,
You
I
know?
think she was saying like that would be like stepping on like the legislature's toes or something like that.
Right. And that's what I wonder, which would maybe this can take us to, I don't mean to just jump to my other favorite story. I'll let you go after this, but I feel like it just relates. This conversation right here makes me wonder what would the end result be of my next favorite story, commission versus agency, because that's not going away. Um, and like if we get an agency or if we get a commission, can they just make things up off the, does that take that away from the legislature and like put that authority in their hands or
Yeah, I think that is the goal.
yeah, I just
Because
wonder
you
about
would
that.
you would have that like you would give them that power, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. And the optimist in me wants to go crazy and be like, wouldn't that be the solution to all of our problems? Like everything that they say, right? But it's like for me, I feel like if a commission or an agency got set up, it would not, as we've seen with all other things, have a consumer focus.
No, not unless there was like a consumer on it.
Right. And that's not going to happen.
You would think not. No.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's my whole thing with commission versus agency. That actually, we got a little bit of light on this, a little bit more information that I wasn't aware of. I mentioned it in my report. I did think it was notable to hear Aaron Johnson. Oh, sorry. She brought up an interesting point that I was previously unaware of, namely that it's a violation of the law for agencies to exchange information. Because I've always been asking you and my audience, like, so this whole commission and agency idea, like they're acting like they don't know everybody's emails. Like if you've got to work with all of these agencies, like I could create a spreadsheet with like a contact list of people you need to reach out for certain things. But that just added a whole other layer of complexity to the subject for me. If it's illegal for agencies to share information, like, well, okay, maybe I guess there is like justification for putting this all under one roof, because I'm just like, you can't call each other. Like, we have cell phones, we have email. Like, what do you
Yeah, that
mean?
seems insane. There must be
Yeah.
some reason for that, but I don't know what that would be.
Yeah, I really feel like what she just mentioned, what I just mentioned that she mentioned is the root of this push. Of course there's this debate between commission and agency, but bottom line is it sounds like
Well, it's also just how other things are regulated, right? Like there's a liquor commission,
true.
there's a gaming commission.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
gonna like make cannabis this big regulated thing. It should have its own commission.
right. But it's interesting to see that does not seem to be the push, at least from the government and from the social equity candidates. They seem to be pushing for agency, while maybe they've changed their stance, but I'm pretty sure CBAI was all gung ho about commission.
Well, wasn't it just about how much public access like you have to the meetings?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the commission would have more public, like more access from what I understand. I mean, if you look at states like Massachusetts, they fucking live stream their commissioner meetings,
Right,
which would be
yeah.
lit. Could you imagine that?
Which I think even though they're live streamed, they still do like crazy shit sometimes.
Oh yeah, you read about it for sure. And that's another thought I just wanted to I wonder if the hesitance to go towards commission is what you see in Massachusetts. I mean, that's not all rainbows and butterflies over there.
No, it's just a different way of organizing things, right? Like people would still be influencing the process.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's still plenty of drama. Like, I think the head commissioner just got like ousted, and I don't even know. I don't know. I'm not even gonna try to start learning all the nuances to Massachusetts cannabis politics, but yeah, interesting stuff over there. So yeah, I felt like those pretty well related to each other. It's like the permanent curbside. It's like, okay, what does the body have authority to do? Well, apparently not much. So we're having this debate about commission and agency that has been punted. I'm sure it's going to come back, um, with what we've heard from not only the CROO themselves, but many other applicants,
Yeah, aren't
licensees and
they?
such.
They get back really busy in like March and April, don't they?
Hmm. Yeah. Last few months, right? That's what we learned.
Well, they like it starts in February, but
Right.
then they like do all their work in like, or maybe it's April and May, something like that.
Hmm. So, anyways, what's your next story, Phil?
Well, I'll combine two of them and say Minnesota and Ohio going rec
Oh yeah.
and having more liberal laws than we do.
Tell us what you mean by that.
I don't specifically remember
Yeah.
because I haven't looked it up recently, but just that their possession limits are higher.
Hmm.
Um, and I believe they both have home grow for all.
Right. Which,
And those would be the two main things I care about. But I also think, well, I don't know if they've hammered out licensing in Ohio, but I know that the licenses in Minnesota are not capped.
mm,
I don't exactly know what the structure is, but
yeah. Yeah, the Ohio one was interesting because you predicted it when I texted you, and it may have been based off something you read, or I don't know. But because it was totally, I was not expecting it, and then it became a real thing. When I texted you about it, I was like, "Whoa, look at Ohio's awesome cannabis legislation," and you were like, "Yeah, but sounds like home grow could be challenged," and those motherfuckers tried to take that away out of Ohio.
they talked about it. I don't think they ever could have gotten it because you have to, it's like Michigan, I think, where if you pass a ballot initiative, you need
Mm,
like a super majority. So you have to
mm.
get like 2/3 to go
Just
along with that.
the fact that it was even talked about. I mean, this isn't the first time that Ohio has had a debate about home grow. You remember that old like Joe Rogan clip I made where this had to have been from years ago, and they were talking about if it's legal, then you should be able to grow it, blah blah blah.
Oh,
Um,
was that about their first ballot
yeah.
initiative? Like
Hmm.
that was a while ago.
Right. But it's crazy to think that this has been a
I just
recurring.
remember that because like they like people didn't come out to support it because it was like a monopolistic
Right.
like Illinois style like cartel licensing.
Yeah.
Um, but I just remember one of the big investors in one of those weed companies was one of the Lachey brothers from 98 Degrees,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
like newlyweds with Jessica Simpson.
Hmm.
I don't know why that just sticks out in my memory.
That's funny. Um, Another honorable mention story for me. Well, really quick, to your point, yeah, I think that was the main point of the video that I saw about Ohio was that, yeah, it was going to only license like a few people, like literally creating a monopoly, a way worse than, I say way worse than Illinois, but it's just on about on par, honestly.
I mean, they have Michigan right on their border.
Hmm.
So,
And really quick, what was that you told me the other day? I almost thought about tweeting it because I do think it's a big deal. What is there going to be a dispensary in Michigan that's only like an hour away from the city limits of Chicago or something?
I mean, from like, yeah, there's a, because New Buffalo is right on the border. Like
Hmm.
Michigan City is on the Indiana side,
Yeah,
you know, as you wouldn't think from the name, but
right.
New Buffalo is like the first city on the Michigan side. But they hadn't allowed dispensaries. I think they were like they opted out at the beginning, but they changed that a little while ago, and so now there's one that opened a while ago, but there's a couple larger operators, like one Herb, and then I think Jars is opening one there. But if you look from my house down like way on the south side of the city, New Buffalo is an hour from my house. Like there aren't that many dispensaries within an hour of my house in Chicago.
Yeah, especially not with those fucking prices
I mean, there's
that they'll
more dispensaries
presumably
in
have.
this area than there are like downstate, I should say.
Sure.
But like, you know, if I was out of weed today and I had to go somewhere to get weed, there's now an option that's, potentially 55 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
And it's going
Damn.
to be a third the price of the stuff. Like they still have like a border tax kind of over in Michigan, but it's still better than here.
Yeah, that's so crazy. That is so crazy. Yeah, Michigan, I'll tell you, they are just continuously showing us how it's done, even though that is exactly the opposite that our government would tell you, including our governor. He's actually, I think, used Michigan as an example. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
I thought it was interesting because you'll always see on like the Illinois trees Reddit, you'll see people say like, "Who's open on Christmas Day?" And people will be like, "No one's open. Go home." And I don't know if people, I think potentially a lot of them are closed here.
Yeah.
But there were a number of dispensaries that were like promoting themselves as open on Christmas Day in Michigan. And
Yeah,
I just think the competition is so fierce, like you can't, they're not going to leave out Christmas Day entirely.
right. Right. Did and please tell the story. You got a delivery on Christmas Day and not from Santa
Yeah,
Claus.
I was sitting there and I ordered like 15 of these distillate darts, and with delivery it came out to like $130 for
Folks,
15 grams of distillate.
folks, that would have cost like $1,000 just for the distillate. I don't even know what we're gonna charge for delivery fees if that becomes a thing, but you can bet you're gonna get milked for that too.
I mean, I don't know how they would do that here. I mean, if it was third parties, they'd probably charge, right? But
Yeah.
over there, it's usually if you order over a certain amount, it's free delivery.
Wow.
And this is like a small town, like 15 minutes outside Flint. This is not like a built up, this is not like Detroit or something.
That's just crazy. I want to get back to what our government has
Well, it's
said.
just, it's crazy that in a city like Chicago, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't get weed delivered in Chicago.
Right. But you can get
In like
alcohol
rural,
delivered.
middle of nowhere Michigan, you can get weed delivered.
Hmm. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I don't know. I guess I do want to just open up this bottle just briefly. I think it's crazy that uh, states like Michigan are constantly pointed to as being a failure. In fact, um, our cannabis regulation oversight officer, Aaron Johnson, at the CBAI meeting, um, referenced Michigan's cannabis market during her fireside chat, and she described it as a struggling market. She talked about hearing discussions at the cannabis regulators conference she went to about cannabis operators facing receivership and enduring significant price compression due to their regulatory framework. And Erin mentioned that her office works every day to ensure that these types of things do not occur in Illinois. I love that because that's almost an exact quote. I didn't write it as a quote because I jotted it down or whatever, but she literally said, our office comes in every day to ensure that these types of things do not happen. And by these types of things, I just heard her reference receivership and price compression. In other words, we have to prevent people from going out of business. We have to prevent prices from falling.
I don't know. It'll be interesting because you would think even like regardless of their intentions, like someone's going to go out of business in Illinois eventually.
Yeah. I
Like a
mean,
lot, like these new dispensaries, like that are like kind of opening up near each other. They're all selling the same stuff. Like
right.
the price compression's hitting them the most. It's just, I don't know. It's interesting. Or you
Hmm.
see like a new craft grower come out charging like $70 an eighth before tax. Like, is that, do they have to charge that if they're not able to sell all those at that price? Are they like screwed?
Right.
Like it's a big investment.
Yeah, I just think it's crazy to hear it's not only her that has talked about price compression. JB Pritzker did in his speech at Ivy Hall, saying that if you issue so many licenses that people constantly talk about in the media, that if we just issued more licenses, things would be better. And he said, well, but if you do that, the price would fall to where people can't make money, and then people get edged out. And so applicants like the folks that started Ivy Hall would never be able to start. It's just like, are we really it's just crazy because I was thinking about this last night, Phil, and then we'll move on. Could you imagine going to a store and being like, this Coca-Cola is too cheap. How are they ever going to make money off this? Or the gas, it's too cheap. Like as a consumer, I
I
don't
just I
really
just
give a
wonder I just wonder who they're talking about in Michigan who's like really struggling. Like I think if you're really struggling over there, you're just not doing it right.
yeah. Yeah.
Like the shops I go to that I try to go to places that are like vertically integrated, single location dispensaries usually that have their grows in the same place. I mean, what better way to cut all your costs and be able to sell great ounces of weed for, you know, slightly under $100?
Yeah. And like you say,
Seems
when
like a
you
sustainable business model for them. They're busy as fuck.
yeah, and I don't know about you, but when you talk to them, as you seem to indicate, so correct me if I'm wrong, but when I talk to them, I get the impression they acknowledge, no, it's not easy to function in this business, but they'd choose this regulatory framework over ours any day of the week because I've explained to them they would not be open. So would you rather not be open or have to compete? Like that's your choices, you know? And they're like, "Hey, I'd like to compete. I want to be in the business."
Hmm.
That's what I've heard.
And if, yeah, like you just have to grow good weed and sell it for a competitive price.
Hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting how again it doesn't seem like high prices are necessarily like a flaw. They're not seen as a flaw in Illinois cannabis industry, at least from the operator's perspective. It's seen as a feature. Like, hey, we can charge higher prices here. You know?
Well, yeah, and it's on consumers too. People in the state are just, at least the people who use the regulated market in the state are just willing to pay just crazy prices for weed.
Yeah. So what's your next story? I can't remember who went last.
I think I went last.
Okay.
But I should probably be keeping better track of this.
I should too. I will go next. I like this one because out of the clamor or whatever, however you describe um the political sessions, I'll just use the description the Illinois News Joint used. After weeks of wrangling on which items to exclude, the cannabis omnibus could not be agreed upon and was not brought up for a vote today, essentially killing all included items. Three items from the omnibus, though, escaped into the state budget. The three cannabis items in the budget that should pass just after midnight and did pass, from what I understand, the state comptroller shall direct the state treasurer to transfer the sum of $40,000 from the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis
40
Fund.
million, Cole, 40 million.
40 million, thank you. 40 million, folks. Learn your numbers. Okay, so 40 million from the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Fund to the Cannabis Business Development Fund. Phil, if folks aren't understanding why I'm putting so much emphasis into reading this, why this is so crazy, break it down if you can.
Uh, that's the money that all the medical cannabis patients have paid for their med cards. But there was like a surplus because those patient fees were only meant to cover the cost of running the program, which they like didn't know how much it was going to cost to run the program. So that was just sitting there in an account. And Bob Morgan for a long time had proposed or talked about um, refunding that to like if you had bought anything from a dispensary in the last 6 months, they were going to refund you, but just divide up that total amount among all the active medical cannabis patients. But
Hmm.
then instead, they decided to steal that from the med patients and give it to social equity startup dispensaries. That med patients can't shop at because they're all rec.
Right, right. So yeah, no, you just beautifully broke down exactly.
It's all very Illinois,
Yes, very Illinois, and I'm looking to
especially the part where the med patients are paying for dispensaries that they can't shop at.
yeah. I'm looking to see he might have taken it down. I was gonna see if I could find the video, one of the first videos Bob ever actually made about this exact subject. He was on the floor and he was talking about giving a refund. See if we can't find that just for giggles and grins. But it's something that he's talked about several times. I did just find one post that he made about it, but let's see if I can actually find the video. Yeah, having trouble with the video, but we'll just post this just to put some put something behind what you just said, and you can actually see a bill number I'm about to share for this proposal that he made, which didn't see the light of the day. And who knows? I mean, this money has been transferred now, so will it ever see the light of the day? I don't know. Um, so let me make this more full screen for you here. Oh, I guess I can't. That's all right. Bob Morgan is here saying, all I believe it is time for med patients to get a refund from the state. When I helped create the medical cannabis program 6 years ago, we used our best guess about how much it would cost to run the state program. The state wasn't supposed to make money from the medical cannabis program. It was only supposed to cover costs for staff, equipment, and IT, but more money is coming in than is needed. And the rest of his post basically says that this bill would make it so that Illinois medical cannabis patients could get a refund. At the time, I believe he was talking about like $250 per patient, which would have been nice. Those were the COVID
Well,
stimulus
and
days.
they've cut those fees like in half or something, right?
Hmm.
Over the years, but there's still probably like more paid into it than actually is used to cover the program. And it's like, is this now just like a funding source for social, like
Yeah. So at the time,
are the card fees going to go up to help pay for these dispensaries?
right, right. Are we to fund social equity on the backs of sick people as we've already done? Um, so
Yes,
apparent,
which they already do with the sustained the high prices and the limited licensing.
right. At the time, there was 28 million, but of course, we just heard that 40 million would was transferred to that fund. So, you know, since 2020, it jumped up to 40. And again, he says largely from per patient fees. This would give at least 20 million back to you, and that would result in $250 in your pocket. So, that,
After all, it is your money.
oh yeah, he did say that. After all, it is your money. Put that back up there. Um, so yeah, good stuff here. Oh, whoops, that's the after all, it is your money. So folks, hold your representatives accountable. This is our money. Let's get it back. Um, so yeah, that was the reason I brought that story up. Now there were some other gems in that story. The fact that the operators got 280E removed from the state level. So any cannabis establishment operating in the state of Illinois and licensed under CRTA does not have to pay 280E. They uncoupled that from our state tax deductions. So big win, I heard from what we heard for those operators. The last thing was some extension to adult use cannabis dispensing organizations to find a location within the BLS region they were awarded for. The whole thing that derailed this was a conversation about a ban on Delta 8, which was led by the support of Verano, Cresco Labs, Nature's Grace and Wellness, and PharmaCann. According to reporting by Illinois News Joint, they played a significant role in the disagreement on the omnibus between the Illinois House and Senate. The proponents of the ban argued that Delta 8 is a dangerous synthetic drug and needed to be banned to protect children. The
The
supporters of the ban,
children.
right? And this is interesting. The supporters of the ban would not take less than a total ban in negotiations. This created splits and ill amongst some of the coalition members. And I would even say hemp growers probably blew that up a little bit. There's a lot of farmers in the state that grow hemp for either consumption purposes now or for industrial purposes, which, you know, some try to argue, I think accurately, that that was the original intent of this, you know, measure. But intent aside, I don't know. Do you want to talk about hemp? Hemp? Is that this time of the
Well,
show?
this kind of ropes in two of my other top stories of the year. One was that that Louis Gluntz beer distributor started carrying like THC beverages. That's why you see them in like Benny's now
Hmm.
in like the Chicago area. I don't know if that's throughout the state.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
But so THC drinks being in a place like Benny's was one of my top stories, but also as far as trying to like regulate those products, like the licensed cannabis operators want that to not be a thing. They all kept going back to this story of the high school kids that overdosed on the gummies they got.
Right.
So that was my other top. That was my other one of my top stories.
Yeah, let's for folks that missed that. Uh well, for folks that missed that, my computer's frozen. Hold on a second here.
Hemp-based cannabis overdoses at Chicago high school linked to neighborhood smoke shop.
Yeah.
Prompt calls for strict regulation.
I like this one. I'm gonna put optimize for video clip. This is amazing because it's only 25 seconds and it just really sets in how dramatic the coverage was.
Breaking tonight, 4 people were shot this afternoon in Chicago's Uptown neighborhood. It happened around 12:30 near the intersection
This is
of
the
North.
wrong report. This is the wrong report. My bad.
When they were leading into that, I was like, wow,
Yeah, this is really they really did this.
they've really overblown that story.
Yeah, damn it. Did I seriously? Oh, here we go. Here we go. I found the actual report I was looking for. Let's try that again here.
Fire officials situation. Cheryl A. Here at Uplift Community High School, where Chicago fire officials have confirmed that 5 students are now at the hospital after eating edibles from a dispensary. We do know that 4 of them are listed in serious condition, one of them right now in critical. We're still waiting to hear back from Chicago police about just what happened here, how those students got their hands on those edibles, and how it got inside of the school. But back out here live, we do know from Chicago fire officials that 5 students are now at the hospital after eating edibles, one of them listed in critical.
How annoyed do you think the people at like Mac Strategies were that he said they got him from a dispensary?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
I don't think I caught that the first couple times I saw that back when it was making the rounds.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I think I actually found that was still not the report I was looking for. I found it. It's 20 seconds long. If this is it, this is my last try, but I just really think this sets in just how dramatic it was.
Breaking news now at Uplift High School in the Uptown neighborhood on the north side. We are told several students have been taken to the hospital after some type of overdose. We're hearing one of those students is in serious to critical condition. Our CBS 2 reporter Melissa Perlman is headed to that scene. We'll get a live
That kid looks like he's smiling
as soon as she is able.
That kid looked like they were smiling. But I just like this report because it starts with the sirens, like it just sounds like chaos is going on. I don't know if that's one of the students. I don't know if it's just B-roll footage, but that person looks just fine. Look, they're smiling right there.
They're in critical condition, Cole.
Yeah. I'm critical.
Yeah, that's funny.
I guess. Yeah. That was the report I was looking for. So sorry, I feel like I cut you off. You were saying things about the high schoolers and stuff.
Oh no, just that's like you saw it, how much 2 different channels covering it. Like, I don't know. It was all part of that whole push to get hemp regulated.
Yeah.
Because that was the whole angle. That was why I was like, oh, how annoyed do you think they were that he said dispensary? Because the whole thing was like, oh, these kids got it from a smoke shop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so interesting that it's very important. I feel that people remember that that's how this debate started in Illinois, because it quickly changed. All of a sudden, the goalposts shifted. So it was a conversation about public health, safety, and saving the children. And then when the hemp operators came out and said, yes, we're all for public health, safety, and saving the children, they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're going to dilute the pool, buddy.
And they'll always go back to, no, you can sell cannabinoids, just not intoxicating ones.
Right. Just not the intoxicating ones. And I just think it's interesting to see. I'm going to find the quote here. 95%. There we go. This is a direct quote from the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Officer. She mentioned that if the federal government closes the loophole, that, quote, 95% of our problems go away, end quote. This is another one I thought was interesting that she followed up on. And this is, I know people are talking about public health and safety and loss of profits and stuff, but this is what I think is most important about this issue. And I wish people were in the pocket on this. She mentioned that right now, local law enforcement is reluctant to do anything due to hemp's federal legality. And she mentioned people just smoking it in the streets and whatever else. And my thing is isn't that a win? If the police don't know what to do and they're not charging you with a cannabis related infraction, isn't that ideal?
Right.
Especially when you consider that the first sentence of the CRTA is saying that police should focus on violent and property crime and nothing, that cannabis should be legal.
Well, they're also, how do you enforce, Illinois has its own possession limits and stuff. But right now you can go online and order hemp products from another state that are way in excess of the limits on cannabis products.
Yeah.
It's that's a win.
Yeah. And
The fact that the cops don't know whether or not to enforce those types of things, like, okay, make it a big gray area so they don't feel like they can enforce it.
right. And you heard I think you said you heard Vaughn Bentley say something to the effect of this. I heard Aaron, and I think you heard her say this too at the meeting. The state has apparently reached out to the attorney general's office to quote, see if there's anything they can do. I don't know what that means.
Well, and
But
I did see some story, I think it was in Geneva, Illinois. There was like a smoke shop that got like 2 employees there got arrested for,
oh yeah.
selling weed essentially. But
Hmm.
I'm sure they were advertising it as like Farm Bill products, at least you would think.
Right, you'd think so. So I don't know. Like we've heard arguments as you told me yesterday. There is an operator out there that probably it's not that they want this to be illegal per se. They want one set of rules. And I guess I sort of get that perspective. But my big thing, again, if I could just keep it in the pocket here, it's like what I've heard that this has resulted in is less people getting arrested for cannabis related infractions. And I just think that's a win. Like, I don't know how you can
And
paint
more
that.
people being able to start businesses.
Right. And that's where the problem comes in, I think, for operators is that they were guaranteed this market share and social equity is market share. And so this is a direct conflict
Well,
with
yeah,
that.
and if there weren't these like stupid caps, and if there were actually cannabis businesses and shops like opening plentifully, like you wouldn't have this market, this like hemp market exploding.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's where I will, that's what I was wanting to say earlier is that, we've complained for a while now about license limitations from a consumer's perspective. We've made the point that we think limitations like these often lead to like a suboptimal experience for consumers with limited choices and higher prices. But I think this hemp industry, so we're coming at it from a consumer's perspective. This hemp industry has successfully challenged and disrupted the licensing system that exists in Illinois. Like we couldn't do that by just complaining about it. Like these motherfuckers just started selling weed. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, I
and
mean I mean, like you just see it everywhere too. Like I was in a little storefront shop in Pilsen a couple weeks ago, and there was just like jars of joints on the counter, like a
yeah,
little liquor store bodega type shop. Um, so it's like Illinois has gotten to the same place I think that New York is at in some senses. I mean, it's not as like advertised, but if you're going into like any smoke shop, small little independently owned convenience shop, like they're probably selling Farm Bill products.
yeah. And one thing I thought that was interesting, people can consider it anecdotal, but you did a pretty good, I would like to think you put your effort in to try to see these things in Michigan. And you were telling me you didn't see these things in Michigan, right?
Well, I was just looking like I didn't go into the smoke shops to like see what they were selling because I only saw a
Sure.
couple of them, but like there's not a bunch of stores like at the smoke shop. It wasn't like Delta 8.
Right.
I don't even think I saw CBD advertised on their window
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So
because
anyway.
like there's just dispensaries all over, and like the
Hmm.
prices are so low. Why would you be buying your stuff at a gas station?
Right. With all of these arguments, I always like to take it back to, and maybe this doesn't resonate with people, but I always like to, I've got this like romantic idea of what the cannabis movement used to be back in the day. And I just wonder that if you would have went back and described what's going on today to like somebody like Tommy Chong, I like to use him as an example, like, hey man, weed's not going to be it's funny, it is kind of completely legal, but if you just describe to him like, you will be able to buy drinks with weed in it and you'll be able to, but some people are going to take issue with that because then they can't make money. I just feel like somebody like Tommy Chong would be like, so what? Weed's legal. What the fuck are you talking about? You know?
Yeah. I
Like,
feel like though, I remember like, a long time ago looking up the prices of weed in Amsterdam when that was like, oh, if you go to Amsterdam, you can buy weed in a coffee shop. And just being like, oh, well, that's like not that different from what I pay.
yeah,
Made it a
yeah,
little less exciting.
yeah. I don't know. It's crazy to me that we live in a world where we have basically federally legal weed, and some people are saying we need to stop that. Like, it's crazy. And when they bring up intent, this is where I will at least put a cap on this conversation, because intent is always
No
comes up in
caps,
this.
Cole, no
No
caps.
caps, right? That's the problem. Um, when people talk about the legislative intent of the farm bill, I feel like they think that like Mitch McConnell like sat down like under candlelight and wrote the farm bill. And it's like, do you guys know how?
Well, and it's like it acts like there's other legislation out there that didn't like that didn't come into being and like do something like 401ks, like how that became like the main retirement vehicle for like the whole country. I don't think that was like its intention at the time.
Yeah,
Like I think it started as a much smaller like little thing, but I don't know if that's a great example, but there's other things I'm sure that have passed that it wasn't the true intention, but then like just became how it went because they were like, oh, this is working out. The farm bill's working out.
yeah. And I'll
It
admit
seems
that,
like that should be how they just legalize weed, right?
yes, yes, absolutely. Box Brown actually recently made that point in one of his Twitter things. It's like, just do what you did with hemp to weed. Take it off of the Controlled Substances Act, which is that's what it did. Like, how is that not a win? You know? Um, I don't know though. People just I think what it comes down to, there's another facet of this that people think that hemp equals synthetic or not natural. And it just, people haven't been able to get over that hump. I truly believe that plays into this conversation because people think that these are fake products. You know, oh, it's got THCA in it. What is that? Fake? And it's like, some people don't realize that we've been smoking THCA for years, you know.
Well, and some of it is fake, right? Like a
Fair,
THCO is not a real thing,
fair. Yep.
right? But a delta 8 is that occurs naturally, just not in like a giant amount.
Yeah. And my whole thing is, I just, you don't have to consume Delta. That's what I think is weird about some of the way that people approach this. They're like, I would never use Delta 8. I don't know anybody that uses Delta 8. And it's like,
Who's still doing delta 8? All the
right.
hemp stuff I see is delta 9.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This delta 8 conversation just seems like everyone got on this debate and then the market actually moved past that. They're still talking about delta 8.
I know. It's so crazy. You never hear any talk about THCA or Delta 9. And I think it's because, as Charlie Bachtel said on my show, it is a truly identical product. There's there's no bones
Right.
about it, you know? Um, so yeah, interesting. Well, so you just brought up the worker or the high schoolers and stuff. Yeah, that was a good conversation there. That was good stuff. I've got two, knock out two with one stone. The largest seizure of cannabis in Illinois State Police history actually happened this year.
Where was that?
Three years after cannabis was legalized, it was in Henry County. And it actually does look like a pretty large amount of cannabis. I mean, I know that you always call me on that, rightfully so, as you should, because large amounts of cannabis to us are usually small amounts or gigantic amounts to others. That's my way of saying I don't think there's ever such a thing as too much cannabis. There's no such thing. But yeah, this story is Illinois state troopers recently arrested 2 men for allegedly trafficking more than 5,000 pounds of cannabis and what police said was one of the largest seizures in the agency's history.
That is a lot.
So
I don't know. I don't know if you could successfully argue that's personal use.
yeah, you should see this picture that I'm displaying right now. It's a bus, a 2000 Provost bus alongside Interstate 80. And the boxes stacked alongside. I mean, dude, they had to have had this fucking bus packed to the brim. Look at this. This is insane. An ISP K9 was called to the scene and alerted to the odor of narcotics, prompting troopers to search the bus. Numerous packages of a. Go ahead.
I always think because when you see it, was it in like bags?
I mean, we'll have. I don't. Yeah, this is the
Like,
only picture they produced.
Yeah, it's got to smell, right?
Oh, it's got to.
Yeah, with that much.
Well, I mean, think about it. Illinois dispensaries sell or smell, and that's all supposed to be prepackaged product in odor-proof
Like
containers.
vacuum sealed bags of weed, do those smell? I don't know if I've ever been around like
I think a lot of them do.
bags of vacuum sealed weed. I would assume so because it's just plastic, right?
Right. And what I've heard, there's like, I swear, it's like odorology. It's like the study of smell. Um, you can do that and you can layer it up. You can really layer it up, but in terms of vacuum sealing it, let's say you vacuum seal it like 5 times. It's not going to smell for a while, but it will smell.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Well, because the only way I've found, like mason jars are a great way to contain smell.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the only thing I can think that I keep weed in that prevents it. But you're gonna pack 5,000 pounds of weed in mason jars.
Right. So that was pretty crazy. Like I said, though, gonna get 2 birds stoned with this one because there's another article that I actually recently shared. I didn't even realize it was from this year. If you would have asked me, it would have been from years past. But another bust that happened, and the picture is just too good. Illinois sheriff's deputies find nearly 83 pounds of marijuana during traffic stop. Here are the people that seized that. They look like they broke into some of the products. You look at the look on their face, they look really happy. It's just me making a stupid joke. But yeah, you can see there's pretty big vacuum sealed bags. This looks like the vacuum seals you would like package clothing in. Like if you're trying to like, what is that called? When you like try to store a bunch of clothing or like blankets and stuff. I don't know. That's what that looks like to me, this type of bag. Then you got edibles, and it looks like maybe pre-rolled joints, some syrup.
I believe, yeah, that's some other kind of drug.
Yeah.
So whenever I see those like big busts and then they're caught with like an additional kind of drug, I'm always just like,
well,
it's ruining the story.
It actually does say 30 bottles of THC syrup, 40 vape pens. So I don't know if these are the vape. These look like pre-rolls, but they might be the vape pens. But then there's also this stuff over here that look like something, that. So, let's see. Were there any other drugs? It is pretty funny.
I might have been thinking of a different story.
This is hilarious. He was charged with manufacture and delivery of less than 5,000 grams, trafficking in less than 5,000 grams. The police department wants to remind the public that you can only have 5 grams, 30 grams of cannabis flower, 5 grams of cannabis concentrate, 500 milligrams of infused products. I just think it's funny. He had a little bit less than 5,000. They're like, just by the way, you could only have 30. Interesting stuff.
Possession limits are just crazy.
They really are.
They're so low.
They are very low. And especially for your out-of-staters and just the answer. My thing is like, what is the answer to you exceeding that limit? Well, it seems like pretty serious criminal fines, So,
well, there was that case recently.
What case?
I posted about it. It was some guy was caught growing like less than 100 plants, I think, but he had like it was like over five. It was like between 500 and 1,000 grams he was charged with, but then he just ended up getting like probation.
Mm,
I think it was also implied in the story that he was a sex offender, so I'm seems like he has a criminal history. I don't know. I was just sometimes you'll see just people get like some light sentence like that. It's like, well, apparently if you get a good enough lawyer in Illinois, you can get off with quite a bit.
yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's a key factor to mention from what Aaron Johnson did mention at that hearing we went to, or fireside chat. She said something to the effect, and I'm going to butcher it, but I never thought about it that way until she said it that way. She said there are like something like 70 different court jurisdictions across the state of Illinois, or 70 different. How did she say that? It was like,
There are like 70 different criminal justice systems.
thank you. That's what she said. Yep. And I was like, yeah, that's a very a good way of putting it, because Evan Bruno has described that, how, there's been a ruling in some counties where odor proof, that container language cannot be used against you, but in most of Illinois, it still is and can be
Hmm.
used against you, you know? Um, very, very interesting. So,
Well, yeah, and there was like in some small town in Illinois or at the beginning of this year, there was that raid on some guy's house over like 9 plants. And I don't know if they knew how big it was, but like I somehow think that in the city of Chicago, your home is not being raided by SWAT for 9 plants.
right, right. I just, the fact, yeah, maybe there's more to that story that I'm not aware of, but the fact that they're raiding your house at all for just cannabis plants, like it
I think it
really,
was just for the plants. Like they said afterward, they found a pipe bomb, which someone in the comments, I think, said, watch, it was just like extraction equipment.
that's funny. Didn't
Which
even
it
think about
could
that.
be.
Yeah,
Could just be something related to producing cannabis products. A
yeah,
really awful homemade bong.
right. Hmm. That's an interesting one. Yeah. But like I say, just the fact to hear that even the police were involved. I don't know. I just,
Well, and in the story, I would be interested to know more about the case because in the story, the guy was like quoted as saying to his like wife or girlfriend, like, "Oh, don't worry, honey, they're just here to see the plants." So that would make me think he had a med card, right?
yeah, yeah,
Or wasn't aware of the laws.
yeah. Or, yeah, was not aware that there is pretty strict plant counts on these things, you know? So, um, I am just
Oh,
pulling
you
it.
posted something about it being legal to hang things from your rearview mirror.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I was like, oh, you should get like a decorative hemp plant.
I'll have to tell House Hemp that. That's a
You should
freaking
do
great idea.
decorative hanging hemp plants for
Y-
Illinois cars.
Yeah, and they should be a flower so that people can't use the smell of cannabis to it's just my
Hmm.
hemp. It's my hemp air freshener. Yeah, exactly. That is amazing. I'm gonna Speaking of that, I'll be having the Chicago Tribune on to talk about some of the other things that are changing in the next year with regard to laws. There is another cannabis law, I guess, and like if you're under court supervision or probation, the judge cannot stipulate that you're not allowed to use cannabis as a result of that court supervision,
Oh,
or
interesting.
alcohol, which I thought was interesting. It's like, yeah, people should be able to drink and smoke if they're,
Well,
you know,
I mean, some people are like medically dependent on alcohol. So, like, saying they can't drink on probation could be like a death sentence, technically.
yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Unfortunate, but
Yeah,
that's why people go to like detox centers is like your I don't know exactly what happens to their body, but it can like shut down essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, straight up, straight up. Um, so this clip I'm about to play is super interesting, and it underscores a point that I feel I've been trying to make on this show, but on the Chillinois podcast, my whole involvement in this realm, which is that if cannabis is legal, why are arrests continuing? This is something I actually heard. I was just on the road. I heard cannabis, cannabis. I turned up my radio, and this was a show that I heard. And we'll have a link to this full episode. But this moment from this show, I thought was really interesting. And I don't know that I've actually gotten the chance to. We've like texted about this, Phil, but I've not gotten the chance to talk about this. So let's take a look at this clip. Sound only, by the way, folks.
Yeah, we were interested. Actually, we got interested in that. We were interested in generally, but the Tribune
Scoot back just a bit.
Depending on the demographic, but a lot of people are still turning to that illegal market to obtain their cannabis, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we were interested. Actually, we got interested in that. We were interested in generally, but the Tribune did a nice story a couple years back. Their angle on this was that the arrests in Chicago were occurring in places where there weren't dispensaries. And so we took another look at that again. We updated that information and found that that's still the case. And that suggests that one reason that people turn to the illegal market is that it's just more convenient for them. They don't have a dispensary near where they live. And unfortunately, at least as true in Chicago, the lack of dispensaries happens to be in neighborhoods that are primarily ethnic minorities and poorer neighborhoods. So that's still a concerning issue. And one of the criticisms of Illinois' tax act, the Cannabis Tax Act, is that the taxes are so high that cannabis is more expensive to get in a dispensary, even if you have one convenient to you. And so it's actually just cheaper to go and buy it from your local dealer who you may have been buying it from for years. And so we found that those are several of the reasons that people continue to buy illegally: convenience, price, and having a trusted dealer that they've used for a long time.
Is there a difference in, I mean, do we know if there's a difference?
So one of the things I wanted to make sure that was played that I think I must have skipped over is the difference in arrest numbers. I'm just going to play this real quick, and then I want to hear your thoughts, because it's important to play the numbers because they have changed, and people are quick to point this out. So, credit where credit is due.
I try not to do, and we've done, I think, well at not boring the listeners or blindsiding them with too many numbers, but they are striking in this case. In 2015, more than 45,000 arrests for violations of the Cannabis Control Act, 45,000 in 2015. In 2021, so just 6 years later, but after legalization, less than 3,000. So that is a huge drop. Although the fact that arrests are still happening, that does point to the fact, and you looked at this as well, the illicit market.
Which that's actually where we picked up on. I should have just started that clip a little bit earlier. But what do you think about that, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, it's good.
But
I also think, like, does that include improper transport of cannabis? Because I would doubt it.
Probably not, because that's newly defined in the CRTA, I think. So he was talking about offenses under the Cannabis Control Act, which, folks, is from 1978. If you want to learn more, go to thecolmemo.com/history. I'll keep it at that.
Right. Or another number would be like at that town hall I was at, where the guy from the Illinois Cannabis Equity Coalition was talking about people getting felonies for having a concealed carry card and a med card at the same time. Like they'll get pulled over and they'll be like, "Oh, I have a gun in the car. Here's my card." And they'll be like, "Oh, you also have a med card. Well, that voids your FOID. So now you're a felon." So I bet that's not in those numbers either.
Yeah, that's true. And just if folks want to look into that,
or another one, DUIs for being over the 5 nanograms.
Yeah, arbitrary.
That's not going to be in there.
Right.
So
the threshold is arbitrary. I wanted to make clear was what I was saying.
So yeah, that like 45,000 to 3,000, like that's good, but it's also not like a full reflection of the state of cannabis arrests, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you. That's actually much better put than I could have said. I was just going to say I'm a little bit more blunt about it. You just added a lot of nuance to it that I think makes a better case. I always just go straight to, but the number's not zero. You know, they might say
Yeah.
they might say 45,000 and 3,000. Ooh, that's a big difference. Okay, yeah, but the number's not zero.
Well, and somewhere in those numbers, like there was a guy, I don't remember the exact story, but I remember it being that he was caught with like he was caught with like a quarter pound. He had just over 100 grams.
Mm.
So he's charged in that 100 to 500 area, which is a felony. So he would be in part of those three. So it's not like just people with giant garbage bags full of weed. It's
Right.
also, people that are just breaking possession limits, which are pretty low.
Very low. Very
And
low.
arbitrary that, they don't really serve a purpose.
Right. They have
If you want to say people can't have 5 pounds on them at one time, sure. But I mean, why can't I have a pound of weed in a suitcase and go to a friend's house?
right. We're making edibles. We're
Some
smoking a
people
lot of
like
weed.
variety.
Exactly. Yeah. Just displaying right now, folks, in case you're curious about what the offenses are in cannabis. So yeah, if you're in that 100 to 500 gram range, you're getting a felony, 1 to 3 years in prison, and maximum fines of $25,000. And one thing that's interesting, we had a defense attorney on this year, attorney Bob Galholtra, and he was saying that like if you get hit with 100 grams, they hit you with 100 grams. They don't hit you with 70, which is what it should be, right? Like,
Oh, like,
because
yeah.
well,
Well,
30 of them are legal, right?
that would be the case with that guy, right? Who I was just talking about. Because if they subtracted the legal amount you're allowed to have, then he's only over by 70 something,
Right.
which would then be a misdemeanor.
Right. It's so weird. And that doesn't
is
play
weird.
into it, apparently.
Well,
So,
and you would assume like it maybe hasn't been challenged because a lot of people just take plea deals, like you're not going to
right.
want to be someone who's going to try to argue that precedent in court with your actual life.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. So, I don't know if I could just on this specific topic before we move on to at least I think my last and most favorite story of 2023 that I have listed. I think I had one other honorable mention. I think I already mentioned my outdoor cultivation as an honorable mention. That was my other.
We didn't talk about that one yet, but that was
Okay.
one of my top stories.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I just before we get into those last two stories, I just want to say very briefly that luckily, and it's not that I'm like looking for it, but I do accept feedback. And some of the only feedback I've received is that people feel that I'm just constantly complaining about the Illinois cannabis market and that I'm not happy about anything. And I get that impression, or I get that or whatever. But like my thing is, I feel that I'm truly fighting. Like what I want is for you to have access to the cheapest and best weed. And if like you realize that's where I'm coming from, like all of these complaints start to make sense. It's not like I wake up in the morning and want to bitch about things. Like I want access to the cheapest and best weed, and I think everybody should have that access.
Yeah, and it's not like whatever the market is, what the market is. It's like, especially as medical patients, like I should be able to have there should be like a caregiver market.
Yeah.
There should be like a store that's open down the street that grows the weed in back and sells it in the front.
Right.
Like the cannabis laws could be much cooler than they are now. So it's like, yeah, sure, grateful for what there is, but it's like I'm not going to support it financially because it's stupid.
Yeah. Exactly.
And paying that R3 tax is insulting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad it's becoming more of a point of discussion because I think in states like Ohio, there's some other state that just passed a referendum where like a lot of like a fair percentage of the tax dollars are going to law enforcement. And so they were asking cannabis users, like, how do you feel about the fact that the people that have been waging this war on you for all these years, like now you're helping, like it's your responsibility to help fund their continued efforts to whatever they're doing, and I'm not saying it, I think it is a statistically significant portion, and by that I mean over 5%, um, goes to law enforcement. I could be wrong though.
In Illinois.
In Illinois, yeah.
Yeah, I remember something
I
like
think it's
that.
like 6% or like 7% or something like that. So, but I don't know. My point in that is you've always put it much better than I can. It's weird how we've just accepted that, yeah, cannabis users, the victims of the war on drugs, are also shouldered with paying taxes to right the wrongs for the war on drugs.
Well, and it's like, is there a comparable, like, are liquor taxes going to pay for battered women's shelters? Like,
Yeah.
I haven't heard of any program like that. Maybe it exists.
Yeah, our tobacco taxes going to, this is going to be a bad one. Our tobacco taxes going towards, people that I don't know. I was going to say something about secondhand smoke, the damage that is constantly caused by that, but whatever. Stupid point for me. Yeah, so I just wanted to explain that it's not my goal to be negative. I truly don't want things to complain about. It's because I had this idea of what legalization was in my mind because of my experience in other markets and just, your pipe dream, pun intended, of what legalization is going to be is like this place where you can get cheap quality weed and you could smoke with your friends like at the bar and it's no big deal and all of these different things that you would just think you could grow it yourself. Like it's all illegal. You can't smoke it in public. You can't grow it except if you have a med card. And even if you have a med card, you can't grow it outside. Maybe that's a good transition to
Which
our,
transitions to our next story.
yes. Yeah. So Phil, your background is very
When Cole
apropos.
uncovered nature's grace and wellness's outdoor grow. Where was this location?
I think this is in Vermont, Illinois. So if you're watching the video podcast right now, Phil's background is actually this is actually, you can find this online. It's not even a photo that I took. This is just a photo that's online. Thank you, Phil. And I've got the source for that. It's
Yeah,
marijuanaventure.com.
wasn't it bigger when you went?
Uh Slightly bigger. Like there was more if like
This
those.
back here, maybe.
Yeah, that back there. Thank you. That, as you can see, it's starting to be kind of smoothed out to it's being flattened and stuff in your picture. And they have like more stuff there now. So, not outdoor. It's like the greenhouse grow, which by the way, I've heard that some craft growers have been told they can't even use greenhouses, which is a thing that a lot of these cultivators use. This is the marijuana venture story, though, that this photo that Phil's using is from. And this is a story from 2022, which is not before I was aware of it, but it's definitely before I took a keen look into this subject. And I want to be very clear at the outset of this because a lot of craft cultivators have apparently been using this, my reporting, as a conversation piece with the Illinois Department of Ag. And I've even been told that the Illinois Department of Ag is no longer speaking with a lot of these licensees as a result of my reporting. I did not look into this for craft cultivators. It's just convenient. It's just conveniently used. Like they can use that. Like, and the reason I even spoke about craft
Well,
cultivators.
You looked into it more for
Yeah.
medical patients, right? For us being able to grow in our own backyards.
Yeah, I'm asking if I
Yeah.
got to do that, which is that little screened in area in the top left hand of Phil's background. If that's what I have to do, just make a little screened in area and put a fucking camera on it so that I can grow outdoors. I'll do that if that's what I have to do, but apparently I can't even do that and nobody else can either. And thank you. That is the point. Now, it just so happens that conveniently, the reason that craft cultivators are not able to start up is because it costs so much fucking money to build a facility like the one that's directly behind you. And of course, they would have a smaller one, 14,000 square feet. But it costs so much to build that, and they can't even get investments, funding. And I've been arguing that, hey, maybe a way you could do that is by just selling edibles and vapes, which is all you can sell apparently if you do have this variance to grow outdoors.
Which is also stupid.
Yeah, it is pretty silly. They say that, and it's actually the reason that one of the reasons they're not allowing this to go on, apparently, from what I hear on the inside. They have concerns about it not being an indoor structure. They say that's not a secure structure as defined as in the CRTA. That's where they start. But then they go on to say there are farms all over the state of Illinois. In fact, you can see farmland surrounding this property, and they argue that the pesticide use could drift over and contaminate the cannabis, or something could contaminate the cannabis. And my thing is, well, don't we have the strictest testing standards in the nation?
Right.
Shouldn't that accommodate for something?
I don't know. They're just assuming like they're never going to have to compete with outdoor cannabis from another state.
Right. Well, also, they're assuming that cannabis has not been grown outdoors pre 2019. Like, it's been grown outdoors for as long as, I mean, also indoors because of the drug war, but primarily outdoors. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I was just hearing a thing. I think I told you about it. A guy who's like trying to spread like outdoor growing in Michigan more. So the Midwest, like a Midwest climate. It was just interesting. Like his ideas, like you can grow here outdoors, like quality craft flower that people like want to smoke, like seek out to smoke, and that it's actually better than a lot of the stuff you can grow indoors because it's the sun. I don't know if that has any
That's what I
validity
always
to it.
hear, is that the terps, like the flavor profile, the entire experience is better with a sun-grown product, which, I mean, I don't know. I can believe it. I've had like commercially grown tomatoes, which could have been grown outdoors. I don't know. But you compare it to like something grown in my mom's garden, and it's like, it's amazing. So, yeah, I'll have to get connected with that person. You mentioned them once before. But yeah, I guess, just to close on this story, I somebody corrected me recently. They said, Cole, it's not just a trip to Home Depot, but I've been describing
I
this
mean, pretty
setup.
much.
Yeah, I've been describing this setup as a trip to Home Depot because it's just like a few fucking
Okay, Home
poles.
Depot and Best Buy.
Yeah, and Best Buy. You got to get some cameras too, right? Like, but I mean, like, seriously, like, when you look at what this setup actually is, it's just poles, netting, and some cameras and fences, and that's the setup. And so, yeah, apparently these licensees have even been trying to, like I say, you would say they're stepping it back a bit. They're like, okay, we you won't let us do outgrow. Can we do prefab units? No. Can we do greenhouse units? No. Which I found surprising, because from what I hear, and that's actually the number one comment that I got about this story. That's why I found this so interesting, Phil. That's why I'm even like kind of making a point to put some emphasis into this. It's like the number one comment I got about this story, besides why should I care, is all grows have greenhouse grows, Cole. Everybody grows outdoor in Illinois. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking about greenhouse grows. I'm talking about this is outdoor, you know?
Oh yeah.
So, but I'm talking New Era, I know has some. I'm pretty positive that if I look up the Lincoln Cresco facility right now, that they have some. I've even heard that the Lincoln Cresco facility has as close as you can get to an outdoor grow without it being outdoor. The greenhouse opens.
Mm-hmm.
So again, these are just things I've heard. I've not seen, folks. I was gonna look it up, but we're gonna move on to our next story. But any other thoughts on this, Phil? Why was this your favorite story? Just
Well, I don't know if it was my favorite. It was
Or
one of
why did
my
it? Why
favorites.
I tried to push that for you. Why did it make your list of favorites?
Just because it's it's just double standards. GTI and Nature's Grace get to do this, and social equity people who the state claims to want to bend over backwards to help don't get to do it.
Yeah. I have to ask a selfish question on this one. I know that this isn't like a fucking breaking news high schoolers died from Delta 8 gummies story, but like how I am a little bit frustrated that like to first of all, it's I can't find I'm having so much trouble finding the lawsuits that definitely exist. That's definitely why the Illinois Department of Agriculture is not commenting to me. And I've heard that for sure, as mentioned in my article from people high up in the Department of Agriculture. Like they have told me that's why we're not commenting, Cole. There is a lawsuit. And I asked, how do I find the lawsuit? And they laughed at me and said, Cole, I'm not going to help you find the lawsuit. So folks, I need help finding the lawsuit. But my question, I wonder, is it just a boring story? I don't, I figured if
Yeah, I
like
don't think people really pick up the
headline GTI is suing the state of Illinois. That's my headline,
I
for
don't think
what?
people like pick up on the minutia of it.
True. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Anyways, so that's outdoor cultivation in Illinois. Some people can do it. Not all of us though.
And not you.
But not you. That's right. It's dangerous. I'm not anyways. My top story of the year is something I was actually present for. I'm not going to play my footage of it. I'm just going to share the Chicago Sun-Times reporting. Governor Pritzker touts Illinois pot legalization as the model for other states. We built out the most equitable, accessible, and prosperous cannabis ecosystem in the nation, and it's one that helps repair our past harms.
Was this September?
This was in September. Yep, for Benzinga.
Yeah, that's insane to say that shit in September of 2023.
Right? Time, dude, this year. Are you saying that because this year you felt it flew by too?
No. Just calling Illinois the most equitable. It's just like, what?
Understood.
What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the best. It's the best, man. Here's the thing, Phil. While in many states, legalization of cannabis has produced a multi-billion-dollar industry that lacks diversity and is dominated by an oligopoly of corporations, really only high net worth individuals here in Illinois, the land of the Lincoln, we're trying to do things differently, Phil. So why don't you take that?
Yeah,
Isn't that the
they
perfect
are doing it
description?
differently.
Isn't that the perfect description though of the Illinois cannabis industry? Like the one he just laid out, and then he said, "But in Illinois, we're trying to do it differently."
Well, and they'll always point at the license numbers, and it's like, no, but who's getting all the profits? Like last I saw, 1 in 4 products sold in the state is a Cresco product.
So Phil, you are asking a brilliant question, and I don't have an answer for you, but I have a prediction for you. But before we do that, is this what you're talking about? Is this what they would say? To what we're saying is they would say, well, but we've got 50%.
Right. Yeah.
This is what you're pointing out.
Right. And then if you did like who's actually profiting, it's like much more skewed.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting to look at these comments too. And I just have to say, I still think it's hilarious that their third post mentions us. I archived that for history. I'm proud of that. The state of Illinois made a post including one of my projects. That's just, you can't make it up. So my prediction is that it's going to be a statistically insignificant number of sales. Again, under 5%.
All of these social equity licensees.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because if you're saying 1 in 4, yeah, the numbers are just, they're not there. Like, and think about it. Who's
Well, and what I've
growing?
seen is all of the or most of the price compression is happening on retailers, not the
Yeah.
growers. And I mean, there's only a handful of these craft growers operating.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, I mean, when you think about how many people are operating, that's where I'm coming up with, yeah, with that. So I was just pulling up, um, we can make this quick because it's not a super big story, but I really wanted to talk to you about that emerging cannabis market in Illinois article that you sent me with those cool graphs. You cool to end the show on
Oh
this
yeah,
note?
yeah. Hmm.
Cool.
My prediction for Illinois cannabis though for the year is
Oh yeah,
more of the same.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't.
2024 will look a lot like 2023.
Yeah, and that I didn't mean that to be my prediction for 2024. I just meant that to be my prediction. Since you brought up like how many sale, like that's what I predict to be uh, the number of sales if they ever produce something like that. So, um, but yeah, I'll have to think of a prediction for 2024. But before I do that, it'll probably be what you just said. Honestly, more of the same. I don't see any big changes coming. Unfortunately, I wish I could come up with something optimistic, but I just can't. It seems
I
like
mean,
this is,
you'll have like a handful more craft producers, you'll have more dispensaries open, but like does that really change the market, the nature of the market? Prices will come down a little more.
yeah,
Is that is that all we're after?
right. I think so. I think, people just become apathetic to the progress you're talking about. I think like to your point of what I said or to what I was saying about earlier, I feel like, yeah, that's a little bit too much in the minutia. You know what I mean? Like they hear legal weed and there's a store nearby. And like you'd think the point you're trying to make is you'd think they'd want better options. You'd think they'd want more options. And I don't think that they necessarily don't, but they don't like get so into it that we do that they see even how to accomplish that. Am I being too broad stroke on that? You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like I just feel like it's not that they disagree that they want those things, but to them, it's like that Box Brown comic. The issue is just they don't see it as an issue anymore. They see the issue as over because there are stores you can go to just buy it. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're just like, what's the big deal? you know?
Well, yeah, and at this point, like people using the regulated market in Illinois are just like expecting it to be like it is, you know.
Yeah.
Like if you're really that turned off by it, you're probably not using it anymore.
Right. I was about to just say, I was about to be like I was about to say, which is sad because cannabis is not what you get in the Illinois dispensaries, like by and large. Like cannabis is supposed to be sticky and fresh, and it's not. Very rarely is it that in
Well,
any
or
dispensary that you go to, honestly.
you should just have the option to smell it before you buy it.
Yeah. See what you're buying at the very least, you know? Um, so, but yeah, I don't know. Like I say, that's another point that I've been having trouble getting to resonate with a larger audience. And it always feels like I'm just screaming about it. And it's like, but I'm screaming because I want it to be better. You know what I mean? So,
Well, and these graphs in this thing are like, you know,
yeah,
an example of what we're talking about.
pretty crazy stuff. So let's get into it. The headline, just really quick, if you're wanting to look this up, and links will be in the podcast description as well. The emerging cannabis market in Illinois: prices, taxes, and supply constraints. This is by the University of Illinois, the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Economics. I'll have to try to connect with these authors. So yeah, interesting stuff. One of the things I think just the headline here, this isn't the headline, but it's like how they start the paper, and then we'll get into these graphs. Recreational cannabis prices in Illinois are among the highest in the country. They cite headset data from 2023, more than double the price in nearby Michigan. Illinois also imposes higher retail taxes than Michigan does. And I like that they say it that way because a lot of people lead with we've got higher taxes. No, we've got higher prices. And then yes, also higher taxes. Like it's the 1-2 punch.
Well, what's funny though is at a certain level, the taxes are actually the same, right?
Mm,
Like Illinois taxes cannabis flower, at least like below 35% at 10%. That's the same that Michigan taxes it
oh,
at the state level. But Illinois has a higher sales tax in general. So it's like 6% in Michigan. It's like 10% here roughly.
mm-hmm.
And then Illinois also allows local municipalities to add on taxes at like the city and the county level. So you have another like 6% that can be added on. So that's how you get like, 25% or 26% here. And then over in Michigan, it's only 16. But then if you do for concentrates, that's like 40% versus like 16%.
That is insane.
But that's
That,
like when they say like, oh, lower the cannabis taxes, it's like, well, for like flower, they're really not going to be able to.
right. Yeah.
Because like no, like the local, they're not going to want to give up their 3%.
Yeah.
And then the state does it at the same rate that they do in Michigan. So I feel like you're always going to have that like 25% versus 16%
Yeah.
variance between the two states. They will need to get rid of those concentrate taxes though.
Yeah.
Those are just
Absolutely.
nuts.
Yeah, and they apply to infused products too, because I think they're taxed at the same rate, which is just crazy.
I think slightly less.
Yeah.
I think it's like 20% and then concentrates are like 25, something like that.
Gotcha.
Because they wanted to make it. Oh, and then, but there's also like wholesale taxes, right? So those are added on too. Like when a
Interesting.
grower sells it to a dispensary, that's taxed also at a certain percent.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. Absolutely. Yeah, the wholesale
I don't know.
taxes.
I don't know what those two are between the two states, but
I'll have to try to get my hands on the formula, but I was actually shown that, people always bitch about the $60 eighth, and somebody showed me a breakdown. I'm sure it's not hard to replicate this formula, but honestly, yeah, with the wholesale tax and everything else, they're barely making money selling it at like $60 an eighth. And I say barely making money. I think it was like $15 a profit or something like that per unit, something around there. But then they showed me the breakdown. This person was a hemp operator, so they showed like, hey, I'm setting this at the same price, and I'm making $30 a unit. Like something like
oh,
that.
right. Yeah. Because of the costs of like being in the regulated market.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of a funny comparison. So back over to the report though. Interesting stuff. Did you have any thoughts on this first graphic? I don't mean to breeze by it.
No, I just wish that Michigan would keep that
Oh my
same
God. Thank you.
tally.
I was
Because
just talking to
I feel like Michigan, I feel like over half of what they sell has to be to out of state.
Mhm.
Because they have liberal home grow laws, like up to 12 plants for anyone. And then they have that whole caregiver market that supplies most of the medical community that's still around. So I just feel like there's no way that like if we're doing like a quarter of our sales still to out of state people, there's no way Michigan isn't doing like half.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just got into a conversation with Justin Libby about this because I made that post. I don't even remember what it was about at this point, but I said, why is Michigan consistently outselling, Illinois? And he pointed out that, we do get a lot of out of state sales or something to that effect. And I got into that same thing with him where I was like, I wish Michigan would produce their out of state sales. It would be interesting to see that. This is interesting. The prices have gone down in both markets. So
I
this,
mean, the prices are not comparable to Michigan here, but I've seen like $120 ounces in dispensaries in
yeah,
Illinois.
well, yeah. It's funny. I'll go for $120 ounce in Michigan, but the key distinction there, as you pointed it out earlier, in Michigan, I'm able to look at it first, smell it a little bit. In Illinois, it
Well,
it feels like such a gamble to go for that
well,
$120
also
ounce.
you'll like the shops I'll go to, it's like, okay, here's all of our ounce, like you can get any of these ounces for like 80 or $90, and there's like 8, 10 options, you know? Like just the way with the like prepackaged stuff in Illinois, it's like, I don't know, you look at a menu and it's like they'll have, a smattering of ounces. Half of them are going to be produced by some company you wouldn't want to touch at all. I just feel like there's never that many options.
Yeah. Well, and I want to see if I did not prepare you on this, but I've heard you. We've talked about this before, so I'm going to play a position that I don't completely believe, and I want you to respond to it. Michigan, I've gone to Michigan, and they have shitty weed. So yeah, they got cheaper weed, but the weed sucks.
They do have some shitty weed, just like we do. Yeah, you just got to shop better.
Just got a shot better. Think the example I like that you gave when we've had this conversation in the past is, have you ever been to a liquor store?
Right. Yeah.
There's
Like there's tons of bottom shelf
that
product in
you
liquor
don't even
stores.
see. Like, I actually thought about it. You don't even look at it. You're just like, you know what you want. If it's the Captain Morgan, the Jack Daniels, the fucking what is it? I don't know alcohol, Phil. So
Right.
I'm
Yeah. The
stepping
the
out on a
real
limb.
problem for people like coming to that market new is just that, like, I mean, just like Illinois, like you'd have to do a little bit of research to find out who the good producers are. But in
Yeah.
Illinois, it's like, oh, there's 10 producers. Here's 3 that are pretty much guaranteed to have good products. The rest, it's all a gamble.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather have like 1,000 producers where maybe 100 of them are really good. Like you're still going to have a majority of it be stuff that's probably not appealing to you, but you got way more options.
Right. Yeah. Johnny Walker, that was the other name I was trying to think of. You just look over those options. Like you say, though, there are many options that you could find that are good. And then you might even hear about some like, oh my God, have you tried this new? Like, that's what's so great about these types of economies. And I don't understand why we're preventing them because they're quote unquote tough or price compression, right? Like,
I love price compression.
that's what I'm saying. We should start saying that. I fucking love price compression because honestly, I'm just asking you before we move on to these next few graphs, like in any other market, if prices compress, like you're usually like, woo, like right now, gas prices are falling. They were like 320. Justine told me I'm an old person that I keep track of gas prices, by the way. That's like an old person thing. It's almost like keeping track of
It happens to everybody, Cole.
Yeah. It's like
Don't let
keeping.
don't let me tell you, I remember less than $1 gas.
Oh, really? Wow. Fuck. So, but I've been told it's like keeping track of like postage, the price of postage stamps. That's keeping track of gas prices. But just like a few months ago, it was like 330. Fuck, I was in Chicago. It was like 350, 370. And now I just saw a gas station the other day. It was 268. And I'm like, fuck yeah. I'm not thinking like, oh my God, but how are the people in gas gonna make money? Like I
Yeah,
don't
right.
care. I don't care. I'm happy. And it's interesting how price compression has been used as like a bad thing. Um, there's a lot of interesting information that I'm breezing over here, folks. So definitely look into this. We're just kind of doing the graphs right now. Unless Phil, you had anything specific that you remember. But I thought this one was a really funny graph to see to really put license limitations into like perspective, like how they
Well, and
work.
I like those in parenthesis next to those. It says next to Illinois issued and next to Michigan active. That
Oh
is
yeah,
because like
yeah.
that number would be a lot less if it was like that would just be a flat line pretty much if it was Illinois active.
Yeah, no, straight up, it would be a flat line. Like there'd be the slightest uptick because there's, I think, out of the 80 that have been issued or something like that, which yeah, that looks about right.
There's like a dozen that are like active.
Yeah, I actually heard the other number the other
Maybe
day.
maybe it was like up to 20 that are like permitted to do construction or have started construction, right?
Yeah. I can't remember what the WBEZ report that I listened to the other day and when it was dated, but they were saying less than 10. I'm pretty sure it was like 8. Were actually active, like operational, deemed as operational.
Oh yeah, definitely less than 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
That are like growing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, crazy stuff. This one was an interesting one because this one, you know, it's issued and estimated. Thank you again for pointing out the parentheses. I totally missed that my first go through this. Because that really does change how you look at this data. But it is interesting to see that Illinois, it like makes, it gives you the impression that we're ahead. And I mean, you could say we were, because when we opened on day one, our adult use centers were from the medical program, basically. And so, yeah, we had a lot of production right off the bat. But it is interesting to see the active number has definitely eclipsed, or what is it? It's surpassed the estimated number of license production
Well, and
facilities.
you can see too, it seems like it's like cresting in Michigan. It's like these things do kind of find their own
Yeah.
ceiling.
Uh-huh.
Like people aren't going to keep opening these businesses if they see everybody going out of business. So
Right. It's going to work itself out. Like, it'd be interesting to see the curve of price compression. Like, let it play out. And maybe Michigan is what we have to watch on it. Maybe that, like you say, maybe they're going to kind of peter out at what we're at. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. Oregon would probably have a longer record.
True. True.
And I think it's still pretty cheap out there. And I hear it's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really like how they close this. While it is difficult to determine the degree to which high cannabis prices in Illinois are the result of production constraints, there is strong correlation between changes in licensed production capacity and price. As capacity has grown in Michigan over time, prices have fallen more than in Illinois. We conclude that production licensing constraints are one contributor to cross-state differences in prices. There are other potential supply constraints as well. Yeah, I just thought it was very, very
It's just funny to
interesting.
hear, to like read like a scholarly thing like this. It's like, yeah, all of us cannabis users know this.
Right. Right. Yeah, we've been keenly discussing
Seems to
these.
be a strong correlation between the price of weed and the number of licenses issued.
That's so funny. Yeah. That it's basically what you just said there. Accurate and timely information about supply and demand is important for well-functioning agricultural markets. We note that Michigan publishes significantly more detailed information on production than Illinois does. In providing cannabis industry data, Illinois may want to follow the lead of its neighbor. They may also want to follow the lead in other ways. We might want to start pointing to it we might want to stop pointing to it as a failure. Because I don't know. Like, again, we point this out all the time, and this is what we can close on. 2022, Illinois had like 1.8 billion in cannabis sales. I'm just looking it up. 2022 Illinois cannabis sales. What was it like? What's your prediction? Do you remember?
I mean,
Think
I
it was
just
like
know the
1 point.
Michigan. I just know the Michigan sold more.
Yeah, Michigan did sell more. So 1.5. I was close to my 1.6. So Illinois cannabis sales for all of 2022 reached a record high of more than 1.5 billion. So I think it was 1.6. So, but Michigan cannabis sales, I believe, is 2.5. Of course, somehow 2.3. So we will share that. Michigan smashes cannabis sales record at 2.3 billion in 2022. My question to you, the question I've been asking is, if Michigan is a failure, why then are they selling more cannabis than us? You know,
It'd be interesting to see their December numbers.
yeah. And I don't know. I think it's weird that we're hinging success on on how operators feel about the market. My definition of success is the number of people in jail for a cannabis related infraction that's nonviolent. I don't know why I have to quantify it that way, but I feel that I do. Is it 0? No? Okay. Well, then we're not successful yet.
And also, is the market providing the best product for the lowest price for the most people?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be the standard for the market for me.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great standard for the market, if you want to look for success there. So, well, Phil, I think we covered the gamut. Thank you for doing this again with me. This is the second year
Yeah, it
we've
was a
done
pleasure.
this. Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show throughout the year and being a supporter, but also a contributor to the conversation. I always enjoy chatting with you. So
We look forward to more insane and redundant Illinois cannabis news in the new year.
yeah, hopefully we aren't talking about the same things. Before we go, just in case people were wondering what the hell you have in your hand, can you just show people how cool that lighter is that you have?
It's my novelty lighter.
In case people, because you were like talking with it, like making points with it, and people were like, probably like, what the hell is that thing?
Yeah, I had 2 cups of coffee while we were sitting here, so now I'm very fidgety.
No, I liked how it almost looked like you were like conducting music. I liked how you were able to talk with it, but I was just thinking, I was
Yes, I
like,
just sit
oh,
here all day playing with this thing.
yeah. I just know that somebody's sitting there like trying to like pause it and like, what the fuck is that thing in his hand? So,
My
anyways,
microphone.
yeah, there you go. There you go. All right. Well, folks, I hope you found as
All
much
right.
value in this conversation as I did. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a happy 2024, everybody. Smoke as much, smash your record on smoking weed this year. That's the goal. Take care.